You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to yet again another episode of the Red Moon Podcast, live every single Tuesday night, right here on all your favorite social media platforms. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
He's yawning already. It's going to be a long show. And Mr. As always,
Mustard Love.
Mustard Love. It's been a while, guys.
Has it?
Since last week.
Yeah.
That's right. No, we had a little bit of a trip this past week that kind of helped the time go by, well, slower and faster, as it always is. We got to see our good buddy Neil, who was here throughout he was on last week's episode.
It
Was so good. It was an episode.
Neil came. He was watching the episode.
He was watching the episode.
He started,
and it was so good. Mr. Neil Singleton. He is back in Boston, but he stayed throughout the week. We got to go to the lake with him and enjoy the few days that we were there. About 2 days. Really, it was maybe one full day, but it was good. It was nice to go back. We had already been once this year. Just went for a little excursion. Jacob Burris also got to join us. That was nice. He hasn't been on the show in a while. Maybe
he should have been on here because he did see this movie with us.
Yes,
that we're going to review tonight.
We should have invited him. Yeah,
because
why didn't we do that?
Jacob, I don't know if you're out there.
If you can get here in 5 minutes,
drop your fatherly. Here he is. No, I'm just kidding. He's not here.
Actually, his children should be in bed already. So
I don't know why they don't have school tomorrow.
You just you need to maybe because they are very young.
Yeah. Two of them are.
I don't know if the oldest is in bed, to be honest, but I know the other two.
I would say she's old enough to be in school. But school here in Jefferson County in Kentucky is royally screwed. Okay, they are still not back in school because we have a lot of imbeciles and ignorant people.
Marty Polio.
Okay, we can name drop.
I'm just saying, polio is a disease that cripples cripples the body, and he is a disease
and
crippling
it cripples
the
school system.
Yes. So I'm just
of course he'd be like, it's polio, not polio.
I know.
But no, let's just say that the school system that we are all alumni of. It was bad when we were in it, and hasn't gotten better. It's just gotten worse.
Way worse.
So and way worse to the point where first day of school was last Wednesday,
and they haven't been back yet.
They're not back after that first day. They've been out because of a busing issue. So they're staggering it and going back Friday.
Well, some elementary and middle will go back Friday.
This doesn't make. This doesn't need to be a part of a movie podcast and doesn't really apply to anybody outside
it's local
of our
politics, but
it
still.
Is. Yeah. But it's just funny that here we are
idiocy.
in 2023, and imagine that politics doesn't fix anything.
Yeah. In 2023, the bus drivers are still getting their routes on Google Maps on paper.
Yeah. Don't worry.
It's like we found the error. It was MapQuest.
No, they are considering hiring someone to sit on the bus with their phone. I'm like, why don't you just put a GPS on the bus?
Yeah.
Why are you having someone sit on the bus with the phone?
No, they'll
they'll
finally upgrade to GPSs, but it'll be TomToms.
Yeah.
Like nobody uses a TomTom
Just that
anymore.
picture of Michael Scott turning into the lake in The Office. He's like, no, this is what it told me to do. I'm going to do what it tells me. But thank you all for joining us. We did go see a movie this weekend again while we were down there.
Yeah, we did
during our mini lake trip. And it
was a movie.
It would have been nice if we had went and swam in the lake and maybe
with sharks.
A shark come up and eat us before we had seen this movie.
Yeah.
That would have been more delightful than this film.
I don't I mean, I expected like a ridiculous, over the top movie. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
But there's a difference in that and just something that's played out bad. And I guess we'll get into the review because I don't think any of us expected what we received when we went to see this movie.
No.
Quite surprised.
There's very few movies that I've actually sat through and been like, yeah, I wish that I would have never came here. So it was like we should have just stayed back at the house and played Nintendo or stared at each other
or even poker
or just went to bed
or
watched
Texas
The Room.
Hold'em.
Anything was better than the movie.
The Room was better than this movie.
That's true.
True. And I thought, man, when we watched The Room for the 800th time, I'll be honest,
it doesn't get old.
It also doesn't get any shorter.
No,
because it really seemed long this time for some reason. It was really long. The amount of cutaways to cityscapes just to serve as a transition, only to come back to the same scene that we were just in.
Sex scene.
It's pretty hilarious.
Lots
the
of
first
sex
15
in that movie.
minutes. Oh, it was so great. Because I think Neil had completely forgot about it, and he's sitting there watching it, and then it gets to one sex scene, and then another, and then another.
That's all these people do.
It's great. Great movie. Thanks, Tommy Wiseau. Genius. Alrighty, yes, time for further ado. No, without further ado, here is our review of Meg 2, The Trench. The following is a review by Keith Cheatham. Though strikes continue, Hollywood has had great results at the theater the last few weeks, thanks mainly to the likes of Barbie and Oppenheimer, both of which took the top spots again this weekend at the box office, with other lesser earning yet still successful franchise films, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, and The Meg 2, The Trench, helping to bolster the box office. Having reviewed the first three mentioned films already, this weekend we took the opportunity to dive back down into the Mariana Trench for The Meg 2. Directed by Ben Wheatley and based on the second novel in the Meg series by Steve Alten, simply titled The Trench, The Meg 2 picks up 5 years after the first. Jason Statham returns as Jonas Taylor, who now assists Mana 1 in their research of the trench, when he's not fighting criminals destroying the environment. Luckily, the film doesn't focus too much on the environmentalist angle, but it has far too many other stupid ideas in which to crash and burn. Subtitled The Trench, after the book it's based on, The Meg 2 does spend more time exploring the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Too much time. Too much agonizing, dull time in which the main cast spends more time walking across the bottom of the trench and trying to find their way back to the surface than we actually spend on the megalodons for which the film is named. When we finally get to see action set pieces that are uninspired with CGI that is less polished than the first, throw in random aquatic dinosaurs and a giant squid which poses a bigger threat to the cast than the megalodon as well, and the film feels less like a sequel to the Meg and more like a Sci-Fi Channel knockoff that merged the plots of the Meg and Jurassic World. The film is poorly crafted all around, with a story that's only real purpose is to pit people against beasts. While this could be said for the first movie, at least The Meg felt plausible with fun, over-the-top action centered on Jason Statham's attempts at killing the largest shark to ever exist. The Meg 2, however, makes little sense with the characters just stumbling along from scene to scene, surviving just because. There is zero depth or growth to the characters this time around, and even the motivations of both the heroes and villains are paper-thin. The Meg 2 ultimately is the movie everyone thought the first was going to be until it proved critics wrong. Sadly, instead of a witty yet campy and over-the-top thrill ride, The Meg 2 tosses everything smart and well done about the first to become the mindless type of film Sharknado was, yet not even that good. In 2018, when the first film was released, Steve Alten, author of the books, had this to say of the movie. "My feeling has always been that this is a billion-dollar franchise if it was done right. But to be done right, you had to get the shark right, get the cast right, get the tone right. And Warner Brothers has nailed it completely. The producers have nailed it. Despite negative reviews, I would agree that Alten was right about the first film, which profited well enough for a sequel. While The Meg 2 has had a modestly warm reception from audience members, I don't feel it has captured the same magic of the first. And while it seems likely it will gross enough for a third, I fear the franchise may be lost at sea. I give Meg 2, The Trench, 1 out of 4 stars. Ooh, 1 out of 4 stars.
It was a movie show.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yep, it really was. But
Well,
it's done.
Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
That's
sorry.
a much better.
I had to
That
make a
would've
shark
been-
reference.
It's a much better movie.
Yeah.
A Jaws reference there.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that was it just. Yeah, you're gonna
I
find
was
a bigger
looking for
boat.
Jaws, but
It's on there.
it
It's
is.
on the.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
There we go.
That's right.
That's what
Yeah.
we needed.
No, that movie.
They're
was
gonna need a better
terrible.
movie and a bigger budget. Yeah.
It actually, its budget was
Yeah.
$10 million less than the first one, which is odd. Usually you don't go less, but even still, it's not a big difference for it to look as bad as it did compared to the first one. Granted, it's one shark in the first movie versus 3 sharks, several dinosaur things, and a giant kraken, but whatever.
Well, and the full, like, I would say 2 hours that not 2 hours. It felt like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's like about 40 minutes of the movie you spend in the actual
in the
trench. And now here's the thing.
in a undersea
Right.
research facility or something like
you
that.
You could definitely argue, hey, it is called Meg 2 The Trench.
Right.
However, you expect still Meg comes before The Trench.
You expect some Meg in there.
I want some Meg in there. And you get hardly
You
any
got
of it.
3 of them.
Yeah, well, with about 15 minutes of screen time on all 3.
Yeah.
That was my biggest problem with the movie. It's like for 15 minutes it's enjoyable. The rest of it is schlock, and you could just kind of do without.
I mean, the best part is Jason Statham fighting these things on that jet ski,
Yeah.
and even that wasn't well done. It just was the most entertaining part of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and even it's like he kind of comes in with a weird different attitude than he does in the first movie. I mean, first fighting environmentalism, and again, like you say in the
Well,
review,
he's learned now.
He's woke.
Yeah, exactly.
He's woken up.
And the first movie taught him to be a better person.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that little throwaway plot point at the beginning to be like, oh, now we're
He's a dad now.
environmentally conscious. Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because his girlfriend died and left her child with him, so...
Yeah. He's a girl dad.
Died off screen, by the way. Spoiler, I guess. Sorry. I mean, if you haven't seen the cast, she's not in the cast list, and
Yeah.
that's because I guess that actress decided not to return. I don't know. I mean, she's not a well-known actress that I'm aware of, unless she's well-known in China. So when you
None of them really are outside of Jason.
yeah,
Maybe she
exactly.
saw the script and was like,
That's what I'm saying, and I'm like, well, the first one had a
Honestly-
few, because it had Rainn Wilson in it, so the first one was a little bit better on
It
recognizable
had
names.
what's her name? She was kind of getting a pop for a while.
His
the-
ex,
Rosie.
Rosie.
Oh,
Rose.
Ruby Rose.
Ruby Rose,
Yeah.
yeah.
Her fame died down a little though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say this movie felt more like a very much Chinese directed oriented blockbuster film. Very little on the substance, very much on the spectacle, and
Yeah.
that was the part that really kind of irked me, was there wasn't a lot of spectacle.
No.
It just, the spectacle died out in really the first 15 minutes, because even the opening with the T-Rex on the beach,
Yeah.
and it getting, I'm like, nothing that you would see is be like, oh, it's mind-blowing. It really looks like CG that was from several years ago.
Yeah.
And then it continues to get worse, and I think so much of it is because with the $10 million less in budget, they try to expand more of the areas in which they go at the bottom of the ocean, and make some really ridiculous, over-the-top, completely horrendous plot points with regard to walking on the bottom of the ocean floor.
Yeah.
But the suit's going to protect them from the air pressure. I love, it's like, look, I can go along with certain things, but you've really got to sell it to me if you're going to ask me to believe things. When I think, Sean, you pointed out the recent Titan incident
Yeah.
that just imploded going down to see the Titanic, and this is 2 times deeper.
2 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you've got to sell it to me more than what they did in this
Yeah.
film.
Oh, it was terrible.
It was just god awful.
There was no plausibility. I mean, it completely broke any suspension of disbelief. And yeah, like you said, obviously, like, you want substance to be there, but knowing the type of movie it is, like, I kind of okay if it's light on substance, and as long as it has really good spectacle, because, I mean, it's a giant shark that they're fighting.
Yeah.
I get that. That's what I thought the first one was really well at, is that there was enough substance there to justify the story, and then you got all of the great set pieces and action, and in this one, it just had nothing. I mean, like, the story was terrible. The characters' motivations made like no. I mean, there was they were just trying to get rich, and I mean, okay, you got a very generic motivation, like we're gonna mine this stuff at the bottom of the trench and get rich, and I'm like, okay, why is that a problem? I don't know. They never explained why that would be why that's an evil thing to do.
Well, and in part because of that plot point, you also go on many different excursions again that don't involve the sharks. Mm-hmm. We have Jason Statham fighting one baddie who's not even the main baddie on a coal belt, like a conveyor belt.
He works for the people mining.
You've got a boat chase that somewhat ends with the Meg in that structure. Yeah. But even leading up to it, it's like you have a helicopter scene that is, these two guys warding off these, prehistoric creatures.
There were more of those things in the movie. Like those were the things that were killing people the most. I'm like, I don't give a crap about whatever aquatic dinosaurs they found down there. I mean, it's just stupid.
Well, they gave me nothing other than just the very opening shot to be like, oh yeah, these things exist. I'm like, there's no backstory. There's no rhyme or reason as to why.
Nobody questions it. Nobody's like, where'd these things come from? How'd they end up? Like, even the giant squid, which they do show the brief glimpse of it leaving the trench, but none of the characters are just like, all of a sudden there's a giant octopus here now. Like, nobody ever questions that they're being attacked by all this random crap.
And even when they're on the ocean floor and they're trekking to this research facility that once was, then there's mines that are being set that explode, and then there's got to be this
rip a hole in the trend.
I'm like,
in
what
the
is
thermo
this?
curtain or whatever it's called.
I'm just like, this movie is all over the place.
Yeah.
It makes no sense, logically in terms of or scientifically. It just, there's no rhyme or reason from point A to point B to point C.
Another thing that tripped me up, and I guess it's just one of those things where, okay, you could say this is the second movie, they've learned some things, but it's like in the first movie they go down, when they encounter one of these sharks, like there's nothing keeping that shark from destroying the vessel that they're in. Now they've got anti-Meg electromagnetic pulses and all this weird stuff on their ships or on their submarines, so they don't even have to, they go down there and literally they don't even worry about the Megs swimming around. And I thought that was just that completely takes the fear of this giant flipping shark out of the movie for me, because they've got an answer for everything. And I mean, if they have a way to keep them from biting the subs, then I mean, what's to make you even believe that they can get hurt while they're in one of these suits, these exoskeleton things with superhuman strength
that they
and
don't
stuff.
even use for anything? I mean,
they never even use the strength part.
It shows them fighting the aquatic dinosaur things underwater, but they never really showcase that the suits are helping them do anything.
Yeah,
it's like you see him punch them a few times.
Yeah,
but
they make
take
a
the
point.
punch pretty well.
They make a point to show the guy destroying these huge concrete blocks. With the suit.
You would think something like that could probably crush one of those dinosaur things' head, and he's just punching it underwater, and that thing's just taking the hit like it ain't nothing.
No,
I don't know.
I mean,
they're so strong.
They can stand the pressure at the trench. I guess they can withstand that punch. I don't know.
That's true. And might as well Jason Statham as well, because he's just got to breathe water into his sinuses.
That's all it takes.
And he can magically withstand the
swim out there.
If you can snort some water into your sinuses, you can go down to the Titanic, no problem.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I read about this movie afterwards, in regards to that plot point about the depth, was that if you're under the thermo curtain thing, then the pressure is not that curtain is separating.
Well, they didn't say that pressure, but I don't think they ever say that in the movie.
They don't ever say that. And then there's
is that a plot from the book?
Well, no, that's just something in an article I read about it. But they said in the same article, but there's a plot hole in that part. The guy blows a hole in the thermocline, which would let the pressure in or depressurize it and let the pressure out. So it's it doesn't work either way.
I don't think that's how science works.
No. It's not how
physics.
That's not how anything works.
Yeah,
but
this movie is just a dumpster fire. I really wanted to be entertained. I mean, from the trailers, I thought it looked entertaining. It looked like more of what the first one was, and I was just disappointed by how much was shoehorned into this film. And I'm like, all you had to do was add 2 more sharks and just show them wreaking havoc on people.
Yes.
That was it. It wasn't that hard. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And they just tried to go bigger and bolder as if somehow making it more akin to what Sharknado was. It's like, no, when you're trying to be intentionally campy, but overtly campy, it's just, at that point, we know you're trying too hard. It's no longer... It no longer seeks to be what was the gem of what made the first movie so good, and just what made it a fun romp, a good popcorn flick. And I hate to say, that's not what I enjoyed here.
No, there's too much copying of other people's material.
That
like, I mean, there was Jurassic World, the clicker, and him trying to train the shark, just like trying to train velociraptors.
Too.
Oh yeah, it was terrible. And I mean, the keeping the sharks in that area reminded me of Deep Blue Sea. And there's just so many different elements from other shark movies or other movies like that. That's what happened with Deep Blue Sea.
It's just I have YouTube up and
it literally popped up.
It's right here.
That's great.
Underneath our video.
Are you serious?
I'm watching the comments and it's
there it is.
There we go.
Wow. I mean,
sorry.
Even YouTube knows they stole ideas from other people.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was
They know what the OG original was.
Yep.
And that's
Jaws.
much better movie.
Oh.
Yeah.
They even referenced Jaws in this movie.
Yeah,
Well,
the
they-
poison bullets and all that.
I think they're being cheeky.
And
Yeah.
that could have been funny if the rest of the movie wasn't so stupid. At that point, I was just like, oh, Lord.
And even that guy's a perfect summation of the movie. It's so blatantly obvious he's the comic relief, but he doesn't even deliver the lines that he's given. I mean, the writing is just poor. There was the one line, and you saw it on the poster there during the review, of one line from Jason Statham that was like a cell line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, other than that, you get nothing.
good.
There was nothing else.
It wasn't.
that
I don't think it was
delivered well.
supposed to be funny in the way it was, but the deviated septum line was.
Oh yeah. That one
but that was
pretty
just because
good.
it was so bad it was good.
No, you're right.
This
That one was
deviated
good.
septum.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it's like the script, the writing was just terrible. It was rushed and fast paced. Just an overall bad movie. It's really, go watch the first one.
I was
First one was more
disappointed.
entertaining.
Well, it's funny because this has a higher audience score than the first one, and it's rare that we
Wow.
agree with the critics more than the. But I mean, because critics hated this, and audience. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was loved by audiences. It was 76, so more people liked it than not.
I mean,
but still, that's not a huge.
This was Sharknado 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it's Sharknado was good. For what it was. It was
Yeah.
for what it was meant to
supposed
be.
to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sharknado
Yep.
4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and however many that they're all bad.
And it's interesting because I think this is one of those instances where Rotten Tomatoes, you're seeing the opposite of what we normally see, where critics aren't catching on.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, we bash them because they don't catch on to what the the status quo is and what the pop culture following is. Whereas this time, I think it's like, okay, you're having the opposite effect where audiences are giving it a little bit too much leeway and saying, oh, it's supposed to be funny and stupid and campy. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but not this bad. Yeah. Not this bad. So I agree. This is one of those rare instances we agree with the critics.
And I mean, it's not. It's not raking in tons of cash, but it's doing well for its budget. So it is predicted that it'll probably profit or at least do well enough that they'll greenlight a third.
And I'm
So-
okay with that. I will say, as much as I did not like this film, won't watch it again. I'm hopeful for what they can, the takeaways, and maybe with a lot of the backlash and the
maybe they'll
ridicule
do better with
critically.
a third.
I really do think they can maybe if they could just focus on one again. Streamline. These movies do best with the streamlined narrative.
Yeah.
Don't do all this offshoot. I mean, that was the problem with Jurassic World, the whole trilogy.
Yeah, how they fixed Dominion after how bad Fallen Kingdom was.
Yeah. No. My point being that Jurassic World tried to do way too much in each film, and
Yes.
it escalated and got even more verbose and huge and ridiculous on the scale. And it's like, just stick with this. I mean, Jurassic Park is a timeless classic. It's literally people visit park with dinosaurs. Dinosaurs break free. They escape. That's it.
Yeah.
all you
That's
need.
the whole movie. That's the premise.
Well, hell, I like Dominion's premise. It's like, oh crap, they've gotten loose on like the main land, but then they
now
had
we got locusts.
Yeah, it's like you had the perfect premise,
engineering locusts, so
and
that
then you
they
decided
can
to go somewhere
purposefully
else.
eat up all the fields and
Right.
drive profits one way or the other. And I'm like, this is just like,
But from perfect premise to I don't know what they're doing. But I don't know.
Just terrible.
Maybe Meg 3 will be better if it happens.
Real quick tagline. What do you think it's going to be? Meg 3 what?
I can look up the book since that's what the second one's
Yeah.
named
I mean,
after.
it's going to be Meg 3 Everest.
Everest.
He's going
like they
inland.
go up on Mount
If
Everest.
they're on Mount Everest, that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
He was at the
That would
lowest
be
depths. Now he's at the
amazing.
highest peak. I'm just saying.
I think it's going to
coming.
be Loch Ness.
Loch Ness.
I think somehow or another he's going to get into
Dude,
a lake and battle with
of
the Loch Ness
all
monster.
the CG movies, of all the CGI crap that there is, we have not had a good Loch Ness monster movie.
That's because it's real.
I'm just saying.
They can't fake it because
That
it's
would
real.
be good. A good origin story on the Loch Ness monster. Oh,
There's
man.
no good Bigfoot movie either, other than
That's
Harry
true.
and Henderson's.
Yeah.
Wait, what? No, that was Troll Hunter, and that's not really.
That's not
Bigfoot.
Say there's not a I can't
Isn't
think
there,
of
oh,
that.
Sasquatch. That was a sci-fi movie.
Oh
It was
yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
He means like an actual.
I mean a
good,
legit
yeah,
movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's true. That would be a good like
I mean,
suspenseful horror film. Not
Yes.
even horror, just like mystery. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that would be good. That'd be a good one.
Okay.
Did you have something
You
else?
can
no,
come
no.
up with
I
it?
was just thinking, just as far as
Is
how
there
the-
another book?
Oh, I haven't pulled it up yet.
Okay.
I was
I
just
thought
looking-
that's what you're.
I was
I
kinda
thought you were-
I am.
curious.
I am. There is. There's like 8 books. I just didn't know what the
Oh
title
my
of the third one is.
That's why he
Yeah.
said it could be a franchise.
Yeah, he said he was right. It could be a $1 billion franchise.
Well, here
If,
while you're
um,
looking that one up, I'm gonna run the headlines open, but you can tell us
Yeah.
if you find
It's
the name. Of
it's being really slow for some reason.
no worries.
I think it's because I'm.
You may need to reconnect
That was great.
to the Wi-Fi.
It may be because
I
it's
cleared the credentials.
And it's done.
Oh no, it's connected to your
It is.
Wi-Fi. Yeah,
Oh, it's just
The-
going.
yeah. It wouldn't be running if it wasn't because I don't have.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Duh, yeah. You know.
I think it's just because I'm trying to stream both the YouTube and
Oh,
at the
yep.
same time.
Yeah. It's my fault.
It's okay. It's okay. But anyways, for the Meg,
Oh, you guys
I
talk
love
like
it.
Jason Statham.
it's Jason
Statham.
Statham.
Jason Statham. I almost did it in the review. I didn't
Statham.
know.
Meg, a novel of deep terror. That's the first book.
Okay.
I like that.
I like
Followed
that
by The Trench, which is the second book.
one. Okay.
And then the third one is Meg, Primal Waters.
Oh, we're going prehistoric
Hey.
on that.
So-
We're going back in time to when
so,
the dinosaurs were there.
Yeah.
When, maybe some cavemen.
The
in
fourth
that
one's called Meg, Hell's Aquarium. So,
Oh,
I kind of dig that one.
so yeah.
I like that one.
And then there's a prequel called Meg Origins, and then there's also Meg Night Stalkers.
What in the this?
They-
It's like this guy found out what Tremors was trying to do for film,
And he did
said,
that
"I'm going to
with the
do it
book."
with a shark for a book."
Well,
series.
here's the thing: is the first one came out. Hold on, when was the first one? The second one came out in '99, so the first one's older than that, '97. So really, the
fits the timeline so perfect.
yeah,
Wow.
but then you got Primal Waters was 2004, Hell's Aquarium is 2009. The really crazy titles come like around the time the movie came out, because Night Stalkers is 2016, which would have been 2 years before the movie. Then there's Generations in 2020, and then he released one this year called Purgatory. So who knows?
if we get like a shark with some kind
Meg
of
Purgatory.
faith, like crisis of conflict,
Oh,
or
that
crisis
would be
of conscience.
hilarious.
Oh my,
Purgatory?
yeah.
Yeah, it's called Meg Purgatory.
Maybe
It's the one that came
everyone
out
he's
this
ever
year.
killed is in purgatory.
Oh no! See, I'm thinking like the trench where they've been living for 65 million years was their purgatory.
but that's the thing; they're
It's like their
already
holding
out.
area.
I mean,
and
see,
then they
that's
get
like
released.
the 8th book. By that point, it's like they're already out of purgatory.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you had told
Maybe
me
they get put
originally-
back in the trench. Maybe that's the last book.
I don't know, I liked Hell's Aquarium. That was a good subtitle.
If you had said though,
Yeah, it's
if
true.
you had told me, hey, these books came out in the '90s, I would have been like, yep.
I
do
wish it
that.
was like Finding Nemo 3, Hell's Aquarium. Like that would be great.
Nemo's Revenge.
Nemo's Revenge.
Meg 9, the cuckoo cachoo. All right. All right, let's get onto our headlines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we already ran the open, so we can just go right into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Jump into it.
Disney Plus has got that price hike coming and their password crackdown. That was the big news this past week. No surprise there.
It's interesting.
Didn't we talk about this back when Netflix first started doing it?
We
Hey, if
said
it's successful,
Disney would be the first ones to try it. And sure enough.
well, of course. They have to. They're the ones that are in worse shape and worse than Netflix at this point.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it's interesting the route that
Netflix
they're
isn't
taking.
losing millions of subscribers. They gained millions of subscribers when they changed password sharing.
And that's all the evidence Disney needed.
Well,
And-
because the people who were sharing didn't want to lose it, so and that's what stinks is that not enough people were willing to go without. They ended up ponying up, which is exactly what Netflix wanted.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's interesting that they're pretty much admitting that they have had trouble with the service and it losing subscribers, but I don't think they're being honest. Obviously, they're not with why they have lost those subscribers, because we've kind of somewhat seen it in reading between the lines when Iger came back after Chapek and basically admitted, hey, we want to focus on quality over quantity. However, we've not seen any evidence of that's going to change. The slate is still fully packed of what seems to be mediocre films. You have your ridiculous actors and actresses like Rachel Ziegler who are going out on the press circuit and trashing and denouncing the film Snow White from its original version into the new woke version we're going to be receiving here in a few months. And it's just a question of, why do you think any of this is palatable to, or even attractive to your average viewer? It's like you're doing nothing but scolding anyone who likes these properties, and especially not only grew up on them, but is the legacy that they have, that your entire business is built upon, and you're trashing them. Why do you think you're losing subscribers? Why do you
doesn't
think
make me want to go out and watch it? It's like when you say that, oh, those are antiquated. That movie's antiquated, and the prince kissing her, that's wrong. And this, it's like I enjoy the original Snow White. There's we discussed it on our way back from the lake. Just talking about Peter Pan and Dumbo, and like scenes from those that if you like those scenes or you like those movies, then you're just not a good person, because those are bigoted things. And it's like, look, you can't judge something. You have to judge it by the time period it was created in. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but also it's a completely different situation from today too. And to act like it never happened, or to try to completely change the essence of what something is, you don't have to have what makes the red man red in the new live action movie, but at the same time you can't take out, with Snow White, they're completely nixing. She said there will be a romance story, but the nature of it's going to be completely different. And I'm like, well, that defeats the purpose of the beginning of the movie. She's singing at the well about wanting to find her true love, and then he comes in and sings to her, and it's like that whole point is them connecting, so that when he comes back later, it's not weird that he kisses her. But then you're trying to turn it into this thing like, well, he just, she's for all intents and purposes dead, so I guess he should have just left her there dead because he couldn't ask her permission if it was okay to save her life or not. I mean,
well, that's where we're at. Heaven forbid you save their life. Let them die before ever kissing them.
Yeah,
especially when they have the same.
I mean, when you're talking about
you.
a fantasy series with a curse, it's kind of like I'm pretty sure the cursed woman would rather be alive than dead. So.
Well, and it's absurd that we're at this point where any kind of creative freedom just leads back to wokeness. And that's all they have to shovel out. And instead of abandoning ship, they're trying to lightly coat anything moving forward in it, or they can't hide it because of things like this, where the actor just comes out and blatantly says, well, this is not what we're doing. And look, you can't hide it after that, because they're obviously not going to sign on to the project in the first place because it doesn't fit their ideology. So the moment they sign on to it, you already know, based on even their viewpoints that they may give, whether it's in regards to what movie it is they're promoting or not. I mean, honestly, it's like you already know what their point of view is. You know that that's the only reason they signed on, was to change something that was a pivotal cultural, milestone at when it came out.
Well, it built the whole. I mean, Disney as we know it may not exist the way it does if not for the success. I mean, that was their first feature-length animated film. I mean, that Snow White launched what would become Walt Disney's success. And it's like a slap in the face, I think, to not only the film, but I mean to Walt Disney himself, to be like, well, even though this is so iconic, and even though this is the foundation for which all our animated movies were birthed, it's evil and antiquated, so we got to completely change it. And I just think that's asinine.
Sean, I think it's.
I was just going to ask, do you think when actors make comments like she did, do you think that they try to like? I know they're not publicly trying to course correct that, but do you think there's any conversation behind the scenes that goes on that's like,
I think
why in the hell did you just say that? You just lost us millions of people coming to see this movie.
Not today. And the reason I say that is because I think now
She'd probably be praised more for saying it.
Well, no.
But
I think there's
they are
more
going to
damage
lose people
done, but there's going to be more, or there will be more damage done if they say something to her, because then she can come out and say, well, now they're trying to shut me up.
Yeah.
And immediately you get the woke warriors coming at her behest. And again, this is the same thing we've seen with the Bud Light controversy. The whole Dylan Mulvaney incident was the fact that Bud Light went down a road they should have never gone down.
Yeah.
And then when they not only tried to backtrack and they had already lost the battle, if you had come out and said sorry, you may have gained the faithful few back, but then all of a sudden you're going to have the other side that's completely pissed. It's a no-win. It's a lose-lose situation. And having someone like this, again, I think this is where it's going to take especially major studios to be better at vetting not just the popular name that's going to somehow draw in the audiences you think it is. I mean, this is the exact reason they had a flop with The Little Mermaid. Have nothing against the actress who played her. She's not Ariel. She's not what you think of when you think of Ariel from the animated film. It's clearly a race-swapped role. They did it intentionally to garner the talking points and to get the traction and to get the what's the word I'm looking for?
They want the brownie
I think they
points.
checked
The publicity.
the box.
They wanted
Yeah,
they
I
wanted
think
the
they checked off the
publicity.
box.
They wanted the people. Well, but I think they wanted to generate. They thought the generating of word of mouth and getting people talking about it was going to be enough to also get butts and seats, and it wasn't. It was enough to either tick you off because you were like, this isn't the movie I remember as a childhood. Never mind, it's also the umpteenth live action film that nobody has cared about and wants to see. But I think so much of their moves have not been creative decisions for creative sake. It's been for the political points. It's for the diversity sake. It's for us saying, look at all the wokeness that we have and look at all the virtue signaling we can do to win these points with the crowd who literally doesn't make up a majority of your audience. So it just doesn't make any sense. And I think the same thing goes for someone like her being cast. I mean, literally, Snow White, skin as white as snow. I'm like, she obviously does not reflect that. I mean, and it's, to me, it's in essence, Disney's still not pinpointing what is exactly the problem here. And so now what they're doing is they're going the Netflix route of saying, we're hemorrhaging money. We're hemorrhaging subscribers. He said in the conference call, he said they have three main areas: films, parks and entertainment, and streaming. Those are their three focus areas, which, that is the core. If you thought about Disney, that is the core. But you still have to understand what is the underpinning structure and foundation for those three things.
You have to ask why people because obviously their streaming service is not bringing them money. Their films are not bringing them money, and even their parks now have seen a dip in attendance. So you have to ask, why are people not coming to our films? Why are they not coming to our theme parks? And why are they not subscribing to our streaming service? It's not just because people are just tired of Disney. I mean, they've been around this long and for years have been cherished. It has to do with not just the quality of the content, because that is a problem too. I mean, even without the woke subject, a lot of this is subpar, but it's not just that. Like I was about to say Michael Eisner. Ooh, going way back. He might as well be at this one. Bob Iger. There we go. Bob Iger wants to act like it's just a quality problem. Like, the movies just aren't good enough, and that's why we're going to scale back, and we're really going to focus. And it's like, no, because here we are now with Snow White coming out, And the same problems are still here. And it's the fact that people they're tired of being browbeaten. They're tired of being preached at. When I go to watch Snow White, it's a children's like fairy tale story. I mean, you don't expect for them to be shoving all this hot garbage down your throat when it's a story about a woman being saved by 7 dwarfs who aren't even going to be dwarves in this movie.
I know. It's insane. It really is
so
insane.
much for the diversity side of it.
We have to be diverse
You
except
have
for
to hire,
little people.
you have to hire a real paraplegic to play a guy in a wheelchair. You can't, but you don't have to hire real dwarfs or real little people or whatever they're called today.
Well, heaven forbid, because that's offensive.
Yeah, because somehow dwarves, which are real people that exist, is now offensive. I guess they're saying it's offensive to be a midget because that's pretty bad.
We've already seen this backlash when Peter Dinklage is the one that really
Yeah,
ruined it for him.
he started it, and a lot of the actors in that community are mad at him because they said we want those jobs. We don't get.
Yeah,
it's like they don't get the type like.
Well, they don't hire midgets to play normal sized people.
Saying, nobody's hired Peter Dinklage to play Superman. It's not gonna. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
So, and I'm sorry. As much as someone might say, well, why not? They should. It's like, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Do it.
Do it and see how well it goes
At
over.
this point, you can't sink any lower, Disney.
Just do it.
Dude,
At
that'll
least
be the
that'll
next
be
Iron
entertaining.
Man.
Honestly,
Marvel will be like, we're not bringing Robert Downey Jr. back. We're just gonna have Peter Dinklage be Iron Man.
Yes. It's our new series, Marvel Minis.
Marvel minis.
No,
They're not just short stories. They're short people.
That's right.
Short people got no reason to live.
God.
Oh man. No, I honestly,
Randy Newman.
Disney is in trouble. It's clear by the tactic. I mean, if there was anything that I that really stuck out to me, it was this was not a earnings call that was excited about the future in boasting about what they had around the corner. It was an earnings call of desperately trying to share with shareholders, hey, this is our plan moving forward to boost those revenues and increase income. And yeah, that's obviously what an earnings call is for, but what you'd like to see is much more than just factual numbers of here's what we have to do to rig the game to make sure we milk every penny out of who's already interested in our product, as opposed to what's around the corner, what's on the horizon that looks attractive to make Disney a winning formula again. Because at this point, they've got a long uphill battle to climb. There is so much faith lost in the Disney name, and you just cannot bet on them anymore. This year alone has been abysmal for them at the box office.
Every movie has been a flop.
Every single movie. And you can't tell me that is something that they can ignore. They can't.
Yep. And again, rather than focus on ways to win people back, they're going the Netflix route. Well, instead of trying to get people to come back and subscribe, we're just going to charge the people with us more money, and then we're going to crack down on password sharing and make sure that we can squeeze every penny out of people we can, because screw doing better and regaining trust. We're just going to charge you more.
Right. And this kind of goes into our next headline, which is, interestingly enough, it's about Marvel VFX artists who are wanting to unionize. I mean, you've got the time; it's perfect timing with the SAG and the writer strike.
Yeah, it is.
This is the time in which it's like, hey, look, they're already on the picket lines. We know we're being, completely shredded to no end as far as the amount of workload that have been placed on our shoulders. I mean, it's insane to me to think, look,
you could tell in the quality, because like they've said for a while now that they do not have the time or the manpower to actually make quality CGI, and it shows in Marvel's movies that they are not making quality CGI.
They have artists who are sitting here saying we know it's become McDonald's content. It is just churned out. It's fast food.
They don't feel good about
CGI.
their work. They want to do better work, but they can't under the circumstances they have.
And they said that's kind of one of the ways in which they're abused. They know these producers and these huge studios know, especially the likes of Disney, with how much they're pumping out. They know that these are artists who want to make sure that whatever work they're working on looks the best it can possibly look. They don't want to rush something and put something out that, again, because it all comes back to you in the end. I mean, you could sit there and maybe hide some piss poor shoddy work, But the fact is you're letting your team down at that point, and you don't want to be the low guy on the totem pole there, because it's so visually representative of not only the team effort, but also it's very easy to spot when there is bad CGI, and you can always say, I know who worked on that if you're part of the crew. And so you don't want to get thrown under the bus in that regard, but also I know this from just working on even this, the podcast every week and even the projects we've done in the past. You get incredibly passionate about it, that it doesn't matter if millions of people are going to see it or if it's just your parents. Like at the end of the day,
you still want it to look
you
good.
want it to look as best as it can, and you want it to be you want to have some pride in your work and say, look at this, look at what I've created, put it out there for the world, and the world to say, oh man, that's incredible. And so they know that's one way in which these huge companies and like Disney will come after them, and they know they can pressure them into doing these 12, 13-hour days. And they say they only get paid a flat rate for a week typically. Mm-hmm. They are looking at the same. They're looking to join IATSE, and they're wanting to come in at least with the blanket, just basic agreement for that union, which would include a pension and a health care fund, as well as compensation for overtime and compensation for when lunches or meal breaks get cut short because they can't go and they're working on something.
Yeah, I was reading they don't see their families. They work every weekend. Like
but the way they said it is it's unsustainable.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And even they mentioned specifically, and we've talked about it on the show before, the amount of work within just now what Marvel's pumping out with regard to your movies and your TV series. You're looking at 60 hours of content within Phase 4 alone versus that's more than what was in Phase 1 through 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you already understand the amount of taxing work is put upon these people. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, I think it's hard because with all the arguments that they're raising, it's hard to say they don't have a right to unionize. But it's also interesting to think that it really hurts both people. It hurts the industry as a whole because the more unions you have, eventually it's inevitable. It's not there right now, but we're seeing it with the writers and I think even some parts of SAG where you're seeing these unions who have been part of the industry for so long. You're kind of hearing the both sides of the tale, and you're like, okay, it seems like there's some things they want, and that's understandable, and there's other things that it's like, okay, maybe that's a little bit of an overreach. And it's the same here where, no, I think everything that these visual effects artists are asking for is fair, but who's to say that this isn't going to change down the road and either be abused or worse, it doesn't help the overall problem of what the industry as a whole needs to look at, which is just content overload in general. Because truth be told, I mean, a lot of what is being pumped out, it's like the visual effects, they do hurt. I mean, you look at the TV shows, they don't hold up nearly as well as the movies, but they're wanting to produce them on that level.
Yeah.
They're wanting to produce them on a level in which it's something that you're just blown away by. And yet at the same time, it's like you can tell the fidelity of it goes down in quality.
Yeah, The Witcher is, I have finished all of that now. And from the first season of The Witcher to the end of season 3, it's drastic how bad the CGI monsters and even some of the CGI, like the magic and the spells that are being cast and all these different things, it looks terrible. I mean, almost laughable. There's I was actually watching one of the episodes of last week. I think I've watched the final episode, and there's this one part where, and I'm not trying to give it away, but these, the mages and stuff, they're casting.
I don't either.
They're using magic, okay? And I swear to God, Skyrim and some of the stuff that you do in Skyrim looked better than what I was seeing in this show, this multi-million-dollar show. It's just gone to the wayside. Not to mention the writing and everything else, but just the special effects. If you watch the first episode of season 1, you think, oh my God, this is the next Game of Thrones.
Right.
Like, this is amazing.
Well, and also mentioned in the article is they're talking about how, I mean, and this probably speaks to that, which is their resources are exhausted. I mean, there literally are not enough graphic houses around the world for them to actually be able to complete the work that needs to be done in the amount of time they need it to be done, but also to the level of quality that I think is acceptable.
Yeah.
And then what's brought up is, well, AI is right around the corner. They can, we can use that as a backbone. And trust me, I think that's coming, and it's inevitable because it could speed up the process, but they're saying right now it's so premature that now people are wanting to rely on that and studios are wanting to use it, but they'll create a visual effects shot and then they'll send it to visual effects artists saying, hey,
fix this, yeah.
Fix this. It didn't turn out quite like we wanted it to.
Right.
And then they're spending dozens of hours trying to fix something that they could have just started from
They
scratch.
could have made it better from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And just started out and made it. It doesn't really help anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't speed up the process. And granted, look, you're going to have people who dabble in it. You're going to have the technology advance. To me, it's like any other industry. Adapt or die. You're going to have to. And honestly, for all of them complaining about the work that they do already have on their plate, while I hear your arguments, and I think you should be fairly compensated in the same vein as other people are, especially when you look at the amount of projects that have CGI in it anymore. Almost, there's hardly anything,
That's
I would
right,
say,
yeah.
anything of big budget purposes that doesn't have at least at least dozens of visual effect shots.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get an Oppenheimer where it's like zero. But ultimately, and when I say that, I mean CGI, I guess, because visual effects are definitely in Oppenheimer. But I really do think it's also going to be this instance of you're setting up yourself for failure. I don't want to say failure. It's not the right word. You're digging your own grave, maybe not for your generation, but for the next, if you get embroiled in, and this is not to say that you don't deserve to be fairly compensated, but I think this is the problem in part with what we see with what's going on with big Hollywood in general. The studios are so big and so massive that they feel like they have to meet this quota of content that gets pushed out on a regular basis to feed the masses, just like McDonald's tries to shove as many freaking cheeseburgers and French fries down your gullet. And yet at the same time, it's not benefiting anybody. It's not benefiting those who are involved and not benefiting the consumer either. It's just junk food movies and TV. And ultimately, you could say, oh, well, it all comes back to the consumer, and that's what they want. And I'm like, yeah, and look at where we're at in America with how many obese people we have walking around. We also have a lot of dumber people walking around because they just sit at home and watch Netflix all the time and binge it. I'm guilty of it when it comes to a show that I like, absolutely. But ultimately, too, this is indicative of, I think, the culture at large in excess that we live in, but also the excess of Hollywood's nature and how huge they've grown over the last 100 years. And I don't think it's a good bet to just say, well, let's unionize and that's going to fix the problem. Yeah, it fixes the problem now, but it doesn't fix the problem at large, which is what ultimately everyone in Hollywood is facing right now, which is not only creative, a creative, just milquetoast environment. Yeah. It's just creatively dry, but also it creates a bigger problem with how do you even change that moving forward? Yeah. If you were independent artists, if you broke off from the big studio labels and you found other, we have ways in which to digitally distribute now. Yeah. And to get the word out there. If there were ways in which Hollywood could break apart from the big studio model and you could still have independent artists that work for a certain price and for a certain way and they work on things they want to, I really do see that that's gonna have to be the way moving forward.
That's why people fell in love with companies like Blumhouse and A24 is because they were smaller, they were making more independent movies. But even those companies now are starting to team up with the larger production companies, or the larger production companies are starting to buy the independent companies because they know people really like them, and then it just turns into just more generated content. Look at Blumhouse recently. They still make good stuff, but look at the Halloween series. It just became, again, just churn it out. And that was what they were originally, what people liked. What I liked about Blumhouse is that they were smaller films that took time to build up the substance instead of just churning it out because it's a franchise film. And I really think, I would love to see more independent studios rise up out of Hollywood. I think if they went that route, if more workers would go that route, we could get better content. But sadly, we're just getting, push it out there just so we have something to sell. And yeah, like you mentioned, you could say, well, that's consumers are eating up, they're paying for it. But are they anymore? Because Disney's failing. Netflix was losing money. They're out on the up a little bit now because of the subscriptions. But how long does that last before they don't have anything anybody wants to watch?
And then the subscriptions we've talked about on the show before don't tell the whole story.
Yeah. Because they don't release numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't. You don't know what you're watching. If you're watching stuff that you could conceivably buy, but Netflix has it, and you already have a subscription, then you'll watch it. Yeah. If you're watching the 1 or 2 Netflix originals that interest you, but then there's 10 others they've produced and they're flopping because nobody's watching them. Mm-hmm. I just looked up an article today, and it was on either GameSpot or IGN, and they were talking about. They always every few months come out with a list of what's being canceled,
what's dropping,
and what's dropping.
Yeah.
And there were at least 5 shows on there that were canceled. It was like their second season.
You never even heard of?
Yeah. I never heard of them, and they're only 2 seasons in. And I'm like, so what was this? This was a complete because you know the way in which their production value. Because I'll give credit where credit is due. Netflix, it's almost like they leave no. Again, John Hammond in Jurassic Park, no expense spared. Or what is he? No, that's not the line. Is it
spare no expense?
Spare no expense.
Yeah,
spare no expense. And so it's like that. Netflix treats their products like that. But when you have that many that fail on that scale, that's detrimental. That's horrible for your business. And that's the same with Disney. They can't. They're eating the cost now, but your coffers are only so big. I mean, that's why we're seeing not only. We saw the massive layoffs in the spring. We're seeing the going after the password crackdown and the higher rate in subscription models. This is all indicative of not only failures in the creative content space, but this is because you're creating content nobody is watching. They're not consuming it. So stop kidding yourself. There are audiences out there for good content. But you can only feed us junk food so long before we're like, this is not nutritious anymore. I want something savory. I want something that's going to sustain me. And that's where good content comes into play because people will have to start picking and choosing, and they will pass up. They will pass up bad content.
When you have so many streaming services out there now and they all keep raising their prices and eventually I'm sure most of them will start with password crackdown. So it's like when you start squeezing every penny and nickel from customers and there's too many to choose from, they're going to go with the ones that they feel are getting the most for their money's worth. And that's not Disney right now. That may be Netflix for some people. That may be Max for other people. Yep. And it's you're going to have to pick and choose and go with the place that is giving you something that is more edifying than just all the schlock that keeps getting turned over.
No doubt. So we'll keep following this story. We'll see what happens with the VFX artists
it's
and if
interesting.
They unionize.
They pass out the ballots August 21st and have to have them turned in by September 11th. So,
wow. Okay, so we'll see. It'll be pretty soon here to see if there's another union. Which it would only matches the status quo of what Hollywood's known for.
They're full of nothing but unions at this point.
Right. And honestly, I mean, look, I understand it and to a degree. I'm not a union guy myself, but when you're in it, I mean, it was like when I worked at UPS and you had to join. Mm-hmm. When you're in an industry that is run in that way, it is kind of like you got to feed the beast. And I hate to say it, but it's like you're either going to get abused like they have been, unless you come to the table and say, no, this is how we're fighting back. Or you're going to have a lot more people that are willing to follow you, not on just the picket lines, but out of Hollywood in general and say, we got to go somewhere else and create our own Hollywood. Yeah. This is not sustainable. And honestly, I just think, you're even with them voting on it and it passes, you still have a wider problem at large as a whole when it comes to the industry. And so that's going to be decades in the making and seeing how that changes. But let's move on to our final headline real quick. I want to get into this one. It was very interesting that this kind of came up. I thought we would mention it because it was a popular movie in which Sandra Bullock won her only Oscar on. The Blind Side? Mm-hmm. Was it all a lie?
It's blindsided.
Blindsided me.
He's saying he was blindsided. Yeah. So it is. I've seen. It is interesting reading because one of his teammates was talking about how like. He feels like this wasn't like because I know that we had a conversation out there that we'll get into, but he said he feels like this isn't just
can you break it down who like name and who he is?
Well, Michael Oher is he was who The Blind Side was about. He was
He was a high school football player.
I can't pronounce their names. Toeys, whatever.
Tuies,
yeah. He thought they adopted him. They put him into conservatorship, or at least according to what he said. I don't remember. I don't think I ever even watched The Blind Side. I didn't care, to be honest with you. So I don't know if the movie ever painted it as they did adopt him or not. But apparently that was never the case. He thought they were going to adopt him. He was at 18 when he went to live with them. They had him sign a paper he claims he thought was the start of the adoption, so he signed it, but it was really just a conservatorship in which they have made all kinds of money off of him now from his NFL career and the Blind Side movie. And one of his teammates was saying that they honestly believe this wasn't a malicious thing of him trying to be conniving and be like, they think he honestly he realized, like, after, I guess, looking into the adoption stuff that I was cheated out of this money, and he's claiming that they lied to him, they didn't adopt him, they put him in a conservatorship just so they could use him for his career and money. But at the same time, they also did his career, like, I mean, he may not have that career without their guidance that they used to get him into the career. So I do see both sides of it, and I'm just someone who wants more information.
Well, it's
really
interesting because
down.
he even mentions in his statement, and at least we'll have a link to the article. It's NBC News reporting on it. It's interesting that he specifically came out and said, the only statements I'm kind of going by right now are what my lawyer has put out. I'm not going to comment on it publicly. It's kind of, and then we have a statement from the family's lawyer and then also their son. And they've pretty much said, their lawyers has stated that they're hurt by this. They never meant to deceive him. Of course, they've always tried to split everything with him evenly and be there for him. And then their son even pointed out saying, like, yeah, it just kind of sucks that, like, he's like, I understand where he's coming from. I'm never going to say a bad thing about him because I support him. And ultimately, it just sucks that this has got to take place in the public light. Mm-hmm. I really do think this is just an instance of him wanting to set the record straight. And granted, he did come into their family when he was 18, I guess, full time. Before that, they were still helping him. Mm-hmm. He was staying at their house because he was homeless, and the state failed him in terms of actually giving him a proper home to stay in, whether that was a foster home or not. So they always gave him a place. He would kind of bounce around, but that was the one family that really he consistently stayed with until it was full time. And even when he was 18, they said they wanted to adopt him, but because he was now an illegal adult, they couldn't adopt him. That clearly this was the only way forward. So I do think it's kind of it's trickery in the way the lawyer is acting and what he's saying, but also in the way the article is read. I think NBC News is not doing a lot of digging here.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'm like, it's very basic if you contact, I think it was it Tennessee where this took place?
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the state.
Yeah, it was in Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do some investigative journalism because that's what you're supposed to do as a news outlet, and maybe call down there and say, what is the legal process for this? Was this done correctly? Mm-hmm. Because that would tell you answers pretty quick instead of just giving you a headline and a nice juicy news story to spruce up something that seemed fairly conservative back in the day and was a conservative touted film of, oh, look, this poor downtrodden young man gets accepted into this affluent white suburban family, and they raise him into being an upstanding human being. Because, oh, heaven forbid we give that any kind of spotlight and any kind of positive message moving forward. No, now we have a chance to come out and use this as a way to cudgel the family and what happened and say, oh, look what they did to him. They just took advantage of this poor man. And I think that's loaded bullcrap. I don't think the kid himself, who's now a grown man, he's freaking in the NFL. He plays for the Ravens.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think him nor the family wanted this to be in the public spotlight in the way that it is. I think the lawyer for Michael himself is doing some dirty background tricks to get himself a payday, as well as this guy, who, again, if you're in the NFL, you're making plenty of money. I don't think you're making anything to... And another thing the article says that is just baffling to me. They mentioned specifically, his lawyer mentions this, that apparently the conservatorship was supposed to end at 25.
But the arrangement was never terminated.
But the arrangement was, okay, well then, that's not on the family's fault. That's on the state's fault for not ending the conservatorship.
But if they're still making money off his likeness, because that's one of his stipulations.
Well, but here's the thing.
They're still going along with it.
And rightfully so. But if they are under the impression that, hey, it's been terminated, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I
There's
would
so
say
many
they're not if
questions
they're still using it to make money off of him, because that's what it implies.
But here's the thing: if you're making, and I get what you're saying, I'm not trying to call you out, but my point is we don't know the family's motivations. Yeah. It could be crooked. It could also be innocent to the point of, hey, we've been receiving these checks for so long, and this has just been part of it. Yeah. This is not something that we've set up. Yeah. There's so many unanswered questions here and avenues you could go down to immediately go to the malicious sense. Of course his lawyer's going to be arguing that. But the way the article is written, it's just so blatantly one-sided, which I shouldn't be surprised at. Yeah. But again, to just completely dismiss the help, as you alluded to, Keith, that this man received in his upbringing and that they attributed to, you're not going to say that didn't have any involvement in the success he's seen today and where he's at?
Well, it's just like the fact that they brought him out at the Oscars to stand up there and accept the award with her, and she, talks about him, and he talks about, I think they had the family there too.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he spoke and talked about the family and what they had done for him and all this stuff. You think if he thought at that point in his life that he was being taken advantage of in any way, that he would have been vocal about it? I just don't see that. I don't see him standing up there and playing this role if he thought or if he had any ill feelings towards this family.
Yeah, he said at the time, like it wasn't until recently that he.
It wasn't until someone pointed it out to him.
Yes.
But that's why I think it's
true. And also, but here's what I have to say about that: his ignorance of the conservatorship or adoption is the same that the ignorance on the parents' side, who can sit here and say, well, we not only thought this was clear to him, but also we thought it was made clear that he understood, you're 18, we can't legally adopt you. You're a man.
Yeah.
Like, this is the only course we could take. And if that was something he either fully didn't understand, or he did, and he signed it away anyway, not knowing what that related to, this whole time until he figured this out, or until a lawyer came a knocking and said, ooh, payday, this also could have been a misunderstanding in the sense that the family was like, we thought you knew this all along.
Yeah.
We thought you were on.
He even says the way they explained it to him was the fact that he was no longer a minor. The adoption papers are actually now titled a conservatorship. And so he signed that stuff, and it's like they told him that it was a conservatorship. They told him that it wasn't an adoption because you are too old to be adopted. You're an adult. I mean, that'd be like me trying to adopt you. I can't do that.
Why not? Please,
I don't want to.
Let's just see what happens.
You'd be a terrible son. No, I'm just saying it's. And then another thing I will say, and I don't mean this in a mean way at all, but it was very obvious, not only at the Oscars, but in the multiple interviews they did with this kid and the real woman that Sandra Bullock plays in the movie. He wasn't the brightest kid. And it was very obvious that he was I'm not going to sit here and say he was mentally challenged or whatever, but he wasn't 100%.
Well, here's the thing. That's what they would use.
Yeah,
in their
they would
defense.
use to say that. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if he was presented with these things, even if they explained that to him, there's a very good chance he would have just been like, I don't care. It's a bed and clothes on my back. I'll sign it.
Well, that's kind of what he's saying is that he didn't understand that's what the conservatorship meant.
But again, I'm like, even if they explained it to him, he may have still not understood it. We don't have all those details, but you can't come back later and say, I'm sorry, I used to be stupid, now I'm not.
This is all kind of a he said, she said at this point.
Exactly.
I mean, right now we're really in the essence of lawyers back and forth, that most of the public statements that have been made by both parties have been very, it's not been them coming out and, being very descriptive about their feelings on the issue. It's all been lawyer speak.
Yeah.
And it's all been statements by them from the family or from him. But ultimately, this is just, it's sad because it is a positive light and a positive story that focused on, grit and determination and someone who was well off, who was doing something for someone that they cared for deeply and wanted to make a positive impact. And it's just sad to see the state of affairs that we're in culturally, that, regardless of again, I don't necessarily think even Michael's attempts at trying to get this settled is ill will, but I do think it's a little bit disingenuous to say I'm now at this point where I'm going to stake a claim in what I was technically rightfully mine all along, but then completely omit any of the work that was ever done on behalf of me by these people and the life that they did, the opportunities they did give me by being there and being stable for me. I think that's, I mean, to me, I jokingly said when we were talking about this off camera, I was like, sounds a little bit like right now he's Kaepernicking this, which just to me is an excuse of someone trying to get in the spotlight or the limelight for a bit for something that is completely erroneous and is not, to me, doesn't demonstrate good moral character.
I can't help but think that this wouldn't be an issue at all if he was a white football player. And this was a white family.
No, very true.
I think the race has a lot to do with it now. But again, like just reading through some of the stuff there with them talking about how he didn't know that they had total control of his contracts and all of this stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, I just watched this amazing documentary about Michael Jordan, and then I watched the movie Air, which was a pretty accurate portrayal of him signing with Nike to have his own shoes, and his mother handled all of his business and contracts. She met with every Nike. She met with every Adidas. She met with all of them and told him, this is the one you need to go with. This is the one that's in your best interest. And I can't help but think if the Tuohys thought of Michael as a member of their family, whether adopted or not, they would be in control and helping him navigate these contracts and navigate who he should sign with and who he should do this with in his best interest. And I can't help but feel like they probably did that.
I would agree.
And now there's someone, having him come back on this. Just seeing it with Michael Jordan and someone of his talent, and the fact that his mama was in charge of everything. Even as a grown man, his mama was still running him, and he doesn't feel like she took advantage of him.
No, and I do think a huge part of this, and again, this is a huge part of the story as a whole, is I could see you thinking the way that Michael Orr does, in the sense that he was not raised by them. They came into his life.
That's true.
He entered theirs when he was practically raised. I get not animosity, but I get the, hey, wait a sec.
Did they only do this?
Did they only do this to make money off of me?
Yeah.
Did they see a meal ticket?
He
Did
was
they
in a,
see
he was
me
in
to
a
take
home
advantage?
for boys from the age of 11 until he was old enough to go with them.
No, and I get that, but
yeah.
with that comes the broken family and the broken promise of what your family is securing. And I completely, it's the same thing that I can look back to and cherish about having the childhood I had, and thankfully having two loving parents of my mom and dad raising me and leading me into knowing that they were truly out for my best interest, even when I didn't think they were, or even when I wanted to fight them tooth and nail thinking I knew better. And that's something I got because I had been raised by them and they were there since birth. Yeah. This is not something this kid had.
And I will say, regardless of whether there's ill intent on either side or not, if he is still under a conservatorship, at that age, like at my age, if I was under a conservatorship, I would say no, I don't want that. So I don't.
True.
I don't hold it against him for him wanting to end that if it's still in place.
Right.
Now,
Well,
some of the
it's
other
not.
stuff. Okay, it's.
I mean,
not.
according to this thing, it says when he was 25, the court knocked
No,
that out.
they're saying that's what part of the argument is that it was supposed to, but it did not dissolve.
But it was never. Yeah.
The way I read it was, but the arrangement for them to still be in control of his contracts stayed. Like he still let them control his
based on what
finances
he signed?
and his contracts and things like that. Like that was the arrangement. An arrangement isn't necessarily a legally binding thing. That's an agreement between 2 or 3 people. So I think when it says at 25, it was supposed to be done in the courts. It probably was, but the arrangement for him to still be a part of their family and for them to still help manage his career was an arrangement that he made with them.
Yeah, and that could be. I see how
that's the way I'm reading it. But
I can see how you're getting that from that.
I don't
too.
know. I mean, hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll find out more.
I just don't think. Yeah, NBC made that perfectly clear, so I'm not sure.
Well,
but
again, this is like we kind of already stated. It's again, this has been brought to light today. The story kind of broke, and you're having lawyers who are speaking on behalf of both parties. You're only going to get the side of what the lawyer is representing.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have the Tuohys who are just over here distraught and heartbroken, and you're going to have him saying, no, I've earned, and I'm owed this. And again, it's very ugly publicly back and forth, but I hope that in the end, what is being sought by both parties can be not only just resolved in court, but also can be resolved outside of court and amongst themselves to sustain.
And that's always a thing. Once it hits the public, I mean, things always get ugly.
True.
I think it's always better to try to handle these things privately. But when you're a
Agreed.
huge public figure, sometimes that is impossible.
Well, and when you've had such a huge, I mean, again, it's because of the movie and because of the positive outlook and the interviews and how much press and coverage this whole story got when it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, why it's, popping up in the headlines, but yeah, we'll follow it and hopefully this ends best for, I think, the family that he was given by God through them and that they raised him in the best way, shape, or form. And I truly hope that they were seeking the best interest of him and they weren't taking advantage of him. We'll see in the coming months when it plays out. How this story ends. I hope it ends with them coming back together and reconciling. But
I hope it ends with a sequel.
The Blind Side 2.
dreams come true.
Yeah.
Blindsided.
Blindsided. Yes.
Actually, that'll be it.
Game over, man. Game over.
Alrighty, guys, let's move on to our final segment, multimedia.
Yeah.
Multimedia.
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 Speaking of game over.
Hey,
Game over, man.
we got a good one. This is
This has
hopefully
been an
doesn't get
interesting one.
too lengthy here, but no, multimedia. We talk about anything kind of in the pop culture realm and also in the media arts, and of course those blend together perfectly in gaming. And as you can see by our lower third title there, Red Dead Ripoff. And we're not just talking about the Red Dead Redemption game that is coming out
there's all
way
kinds.
overly priced. Specifically, we're talking about mainly what's going on right now. And if you're not involved in the gaming industry and you don't care, this is probably the part of the podcast you want to tune out on.
Yeah.
But if you do care, Baldur's Gate 3 is a huge AAA RPG title that just came out. It's being praised by fans and even other developers, game developers alike. However, it's drawing criticism from some of these developers because the game, over its 6-year development time, nailed down some really great mechanics and made this just a fantastic experience, to the point that developers are saying this is not a good thing. That it is so good a game.
Giving fans what they want is just
Giving
terrible.
fans such an experience like this is now going to make them want it even more, and they're going to come to expect this kind of quality from AAA games, and that, in the end, is just not possible.
Just imagine wanting to get your $70 worth out of a game. Not have it broken and halfway developed, not have to pay for all these microtransactions. Just imagine you buy a game for $70 and you have the full great experience right there. That's awful.
Yeah, I just don't understand. They say it's not possible, but then at the same time, I'm seeing Ian from Jurassic Park going, "Well, there it is." Like, I mean, I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 is the impossible, according to what they're saying. So
What's so
it's
incredible
ridiculous.
is this studio set out specifically to not take the bribes from other major publishers or studios and saying, "Hey, we'll buy you out. We'll give you all the money in the world and be under this one big umbrella." No, they wanted to stay tried and true what their purpose is. Again, this is a third game, and I forget when the original Baldur's Gate came out, but it was way back in the day.
Yeah.
So for it to only be on its third iteration, tells you these are not games that just roll off, onto store
they're
shelves.
not, they're not doing Activision over here
No.
where you're just popping out a game every year. Oh, we're not going to pop one out this year. Surprise, we are.
Oh, look! Oh, we added a new gun. Oh, we added a new skin for a character.
Yeah, we promise it's not DLC.
Yeah. So I do think it is interesting that you have a studio who specifically set out with the mission of not doing microtransitions, including a game that was fully complete from the start, and that ultimately gives you hours, hundreds of hours of multiple choice storylines and multiple endings, and it shows you the thorough nature at which not only the developers went to, but the care and devotion they had in creating a property that they were really hoping was going to land with the fans, but that they were truly creating for fans' sake. And it's paying off now. And you have these other studios who are saying, no, this isn't. We have these deadlines. We've got new things, new IPs in the works, and we gotta get out there, and we gotta keep the cash flow going. And the only way we can guarantee that cash flow is gonna go is to keep our shareholders happy, and that just means pumping out new stuff all the time that just sells and sells and sells and sells, and that becomes the crux of the issue.
Yeah.
The original came out in 1998, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. They've had other spin-off games, but they were smaller spin-offs, and but there's only been like the 3 mainline games.
When was 2? Because they've all been spaced out.
2 years later.
Yes, 2 was
Wow.
2000.
Oh, never mind.
But
I
2
didn't
had-
realize it was that would.
It had
soon.
several expansion packs and stuff throughout the year because they had
Neverwinter Nights.
Oh, I
and
remember
all that stuff.
Neverwinter
yeah.
Nights
because
yes.
they came out in 2001, 2004.
But wasn't Neverwinter Nights a standalone? I thought that was standalone. I didn't think you had to play Baldur's Gate 2 to. I didn't think that was an expansion pack.
It was it's a part of the Dungeons and Dragons world, I guess.
Yeah.
It is.
Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, Pillars of Eternity.
Oh, those aren't
These
the
are all-
video games developed by the studio that I like. At least they're not popping up on here. I think those are just Dungeons and Dragons games.
Oh, okay.
So wait, Neverwinter Nights is not part of the Baldur's Gate series? I just want to get that correct. I don't want to be on here stating
It's
something
not
wrong.
it's not part of Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate is part of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, Baldur's Gate is
Neverwinter.
set in the Forgotten Realms, the same as the movie.
Yeah.
It's set in the Forgotten Realms of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's why they say Neverwinter and Baldur's Gate and all that in the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Okay, right, but I didn't know that those were. But is Neverwinter?
It's not a part of the Baldur's Gate series.
And
No.
it's also
But
it
it is a
developed by
location.
the same company? Is it the same developer?
The Neverwinter. I don't think there's a Neverwinter's Night video game.
Yeah, there is.
It's a PC game.
Yeah, it's a PC
Oh,
game.
well, no, it's not the
Back
same
then.
developer.
You sure?
I mean, according to the Wikipedia page
Okay.
I'm on, it's not, but I don't know.
All right.
I mean, I really don't.
All right. Look, I'm not a fan of Baldur's Gate. I just think it's interesting because this came out and everybody's talking about it. I thought about jumping into it, and I'm like, I don't know if I have time
because
to
I like
dive
Dungeons and
into it.
Dragons, so I already know some of the lore. So I thought it'd be easier for me to jump into, but I just don't know if I want to commit that time.
Reading Baldur's Gate 3 for non-D&D people is what I'm reading right now.
Oh, is that what
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So see, they
It
kind of
says
created.
that Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 spun Neverwinter Nights and these other games like it
Okay.
spurned them into creation, not
Okay.
by the same people.
Okay.
It was just it kind of like sparked a need for those.
Well, the originals
fantasy
were
RPGs.
done by BioWare. 3 is Larian Studios. So.
Yeah, Larian is the one that developed number 3.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And are they? So they just did 1, 2, and 3?
No,
Or just
BioWare did
3?
1 and 2.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, the Larian got a hold of the
So
IP.
I guess they are just different studios making different Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, that tells me
properties.
right there, and
Yeah.
that makes sense as to the kind of going into Larian was a smaller studio. When I say smaller, I'm sure there's, I don't know if it lists on there how many designers and developers they have working for the studio, but I know that they obviously got hold of the IP or granted access to the IP and created a game that obviously now has blown up that fans love. Who are playing it, and it is not only of the essence of what they wanted from this series, but it is exceeding their expectations, and yet they're not a AAA developer that you would think of in terms of which I don't know. Do they have listed other games that they have developed?
I'd have to go to their. I'm on Baldur Gates. I'm not on Larian's.
Okay, I was gonna say, if you don't mind, I'd just like to know what other games they developed. I'm not familiar with that studio.
Divine Divinity, Divinity 2.
I've heard of Divinity 2.
Licensed games is just Baldur's Gate. So
wow,
the Divinity series, and then that was their first licensed game.
So wow, it's almost like they were picked out, or they at least petitioned to, I guess, get this IP. And they spent 6 years developing a game specifically for, I think, not only honoring what had come before it, but really setting the pace for what they could do and accomplish and achieve, but also really doing it for the fans.
Yeah.
And they've turned out, I mean, look, it's a risk because you don't know, spending that kind of development time on something that is going to be a major IP, you don't know if the risks you're taking are going to pay off. So I do give them credit for that in essence, because that's what we're sorely lacking from these other AAA developers. The reason we entitled this segment Red Dead Ripoff was simply because how many people are pissed off that here you have Rockstar Games re-releasing a over decade old game in Red Dead Redemption from the PS2 era PS3 era, my bad, PS3, Xbox 360 era.
Yeah.
They're re-releasing it, not upscaling it. It's not a remaster. They call it a conversion. Literally a conversion from the PS3 to PS4 era.
Yeah.
And all it's doing is releasing the same game that'll play on that console. No 60 frames per second. No 4K upscale.
Basically a port.
No multiplayer. No word if there's going to be multiplayer. It is just a port.
Yeah.
And yet you're paying you're being asked to pay $50 for a 10-year-old game with no changes whatsoever.
Yep.
That's asinine. That's ridiculous. That is not in the name of in the name of the fan or the consumer. That's not on their behalf. That is in spite of them, and that's money grubbing, and that's why people shouldn't buy that game.
People have mentioned the fact that the Xbox is backwards compatible. You can go buy the 360 version. It'll upscale it to 4K, and it's
60.
pretty much the same difference as what you're going to be paying $50 for on
It's
PlayStation or
$30.
Switch. And yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. You also have the reports I shared to that link with you all with Activision and Call of Duty, where they're saying the code is the same from Modern Warfare 2, and this looks like it's essentially was just a developed DLC that they are now selling as a $70 premium game. And of course, Activision has come out and said, no, it is a premium game. It's not just DLC. But I mean, when you're looking at the code, it's the same code from Modern Warfare 2.
Exactly.
I mean, so it's ridiculous that these companies have gotten so big that they think that they can just give you something that would have, I mean, we used to pay what, $30-$40 for a brand new game, and over time it went to 50 and then 60, and now it's 70. And it's like, we understand as technology advances, yes, the PlayStation 5 is way more powerful than all the previous PlayStations. I get that with that hardware, with the technology and having developed for it, the time, the manpower, things are going to cost more. But I'm not going to pay $70 for something like Cyberpunk that when it came out, yeah, it's a full game and it's great now. Same with No Man's Sky. It's a full game and it's great now. But when you release these games and you don't even get a full game and then you're just expecting...
Or they're glitchy. They're half-assed.
They're broken. The Grand Theft Auto collection was garbage.
Definitive Edition was not definitive.
And it's like when you get these crap games that you've paid $70 for, and they'll say, well, don't worry, we'll fix them in a few months. It's like, no, I just paid you $70. I want the game to be working fully the moment I buy it.
Right, but what really says it all is when a couple weeks after the game comes out, you find out they knew the game wasn't ready to be released.
Right.
And they intentionally released it, on time instead of pushing it back. They brought it out on time and charged you full price, knowing that it was going to be months before they would patch it into what it was supposed to be.
And a lot of people are comparing this launch of Baldur's Gate 3 to the abysmal release of the Season 1 pass for Diablo 4.
Yeah.
And Diablo 4 literally went from a high critical rating and a pretty positive user score to just cratering at a 2.5 on Metacritic from users because they were pissed realizing that this Season 1 didn't clear up any of the it wasn't just clearing up bugs, but it wasn't giving quality of life improvements that they were promised or that they wanted. They weren't given any extra content that made it worthwhile to continue playing the game. It was like a chore list of objectives that just had you continue to play and play and play for the sake of saying, I'm pouring in hours, I'm just churning away to say, and instead of actually offering the player a fun world to explore and new alternatives, ways to play to get more life out of a game that you've just spent a crap ton of money on. And it's like you expect that the players don't see this because, again, you have companies that are being led by sales associates, by marketers who just see numbers. And all they care about is numbers on a spreadsheet. And they say, well, if we have so many of these players per day at this many hours in game, then this is called a success. This is where we're at. And if we can keep them engaged in that way, we know they're going to keep paying and they're going to be feeding that dopamine. And we don't care to give them something fun to play. But at the end of the day, you have actual gamers who see that, they do see right through it. And it's like, okay, if you're not going to value my time and the effort that I put into this, then I know what you're doing. It's a cheap trick, and I'm not signing on. I'm not paying for this. Screw you. I will go over here to a Baldur's Gate 3 where they actually give me a quality, fun adventure to partake in, and also they value my time enough that it's not wasted. I actually feel like I'm living into this world that they've wanted me to explore and expose all of its glory and fun and all the things they built into it.
Well,
you go ahead.
I was going to say, it's kind of one of the things that you've noticed getting your first Nintendo console, and I've known for a while, and Keith's probably the same way, but when you pay $70 or $60 for a Zelda game, like you're getting your money's worth. You're getting 100 hours of gameplay. You're getting new discoveries every time you pick up your controller. Like there's a I don't think there's very many Nintendo games, not games made for the Nintendo, but I'm talking about Nintendo properties like Mario and Smash Brothers and Zelda, like Metroid. Those games, when you pay for them, you're getting a good game.
Yes.
And it's sad that when you've got something as premium as Sony and Microsoft and even all of these PC gamers who pump thousands of dollars into their gaming rigs and all of this stuff, and then they get cheated when they actually come time to buy a game and play it. Call of Duty to me is one of the worst ones right now when it comes to the microtransactions. And they disguise, we were just talking about it outside, they disguise this free Modern Warfare Warzone or Call of Duty Warzone as this free place for everybody to come and play. But me and Keith and Neil tried to play this game together weeks ago and couldn't get all three of us, even though you can have three people in a party. It would not party all three of us up to let us start a game. We had to do two people and then let the game connect to a server and then immediately hope that Neil could jump in and join real quick to get connected. And this happened not only just a few weeks ago when we tried to do it, it happened over a month before, and people were online complaining about it.
It's an ongoing issue.
And it still has not been fixed.
Wow.
And they're making bank off of all the microtransactions in that game. You can't tell me it's a money issue to get on there and fix this stuff.
And that's part and parcel of the issue is you could maybe make some argument to, I forget the person who tweeted out about why these AAA or a AAA title like Baldur's Gate was the exception, not the rule. And there were some good points, but to have the tons of developers jump on the bandwagon and say, yes, this guy's right because, we're about to be worked to death. It's like, no, that's the company you work for. That's Blizzard Entertainment that has they have thousands of employees and thousands of developers, and they are a behemoth of a company bringing in billions of dollars. And you can't sit here and tell me they don't have the resources to fix problems that are in the game right away. That they don't have people on standby ready to actually we gotta sit here and think about this and how we're going to incorporate it because we developed the game this way. Okay, well, whether it's short-sighted on your part and you figured out there's an issue, You're the developer of the game.
Yep.
You're the one who created the problem. You're the one who fixes it. Because when you have modders come out in the community and they rush and then all of a sudden crowdsource something and in a week a problem is fixed, but you got to freaking rig your game to play some janky version of it just so that you can get a mod that works, that actually makes the game better, that's piss poor on the developer.
And maybe that's why they didn't go with BioWare because now that they're owned by EA, maybe you're like, you know what, we don't want to go with such a big studio for our third Baldur's Gate. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. Who knows what else they could be working on.
Because it looks like because I was looking, because the BioWare did develop Neverwinter Nights, because they developed a lot of games set within the Dungeons and Dragons.
They also did like a lot of RPGs.
They
Jade
did.
Empire.
They did. But I'm just talking about specifically the Dungeons and Dragons one. It looks like
Dragon Age
for the longest time, Wizards of the Coast.
Mass Effect. Was that
Yes.
BioWare?
BioWare did Mass Effect.
They did Mass Effect. But I just mean specifically the Dungeons and Dragons. It looks because they're owned by Wizards of the Coast. I think that's interesting because that's like Blizzard and them are like head to head. You have Wizards of the Coast with Dungeons and Dragons, and then Blizzard with Warcraft. Yeah. So it's just funny to me that they did go with BioWare, it looks like, for a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons games for a long time, and then it kind of suddenly stopped. And I do wonder if that was because they became too big. I mean, they were doing great games in RPGs, but once EA bought them, like a lot of people have soured on BioWare because their RPGs aren't as good as they used to be when they were independent.
Well, and it's sad because the same thing goes for Blizzard. I forget who the he's got a pretty prominent following on X, and
I'm still not used to that.
It's weird.
I'm not used to that
it's
at all.
Twitter. But he's got a pretty prominent following, and he was a former Blizzard exec, or not an exec. He was a developer as well, but he specifically left the company when they got bought out, and he said, look, he was just like, the old days are done. Like, he's like, you can't depend on that company to make the right decision anymore. It comes down to a bottom line. It comes down to a profit motivation over everything else. And I look, you're going to sit here and say, well, and this is the argument I would even make from a business standpoint. Yeah, at the end of the day, you got to make money. That is what a business and a company is there for. But just like we've seen with Disney in the movie industry, when you focus so much on just the bottom line at all costs, again, at all costs, it's going to cost you your bottom line because you're going to produce something that people do not appreciate and they don't like and they're not going to support. And that's going to affect your bottom line overall. So you can get out, live high off the hog while you can, while it's still going in your favor. But the moment you start producing things and shoveling out crap that fans are not going to enjoy and that consumers are, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth, they're not going to return.
Nope.
They're not going to come back for seconds. Now, I don't think Diablo 4 has that bad of a reputation. I think there's still plenty of people playing it. It's still got plenty of fan service.
Yeah.
And you give fans, sadly, 4 or 5 years off the same, because hell, I was like, Diablo 3 released when I was like just out of college.
It was on PS3.
It was like 2013, 2014.
I don't remember.
Well,
it had to have been. It's been over 10 years, I think.
It came out on PS3, then it came out on PS4, and then they also, at the PS5's launch, did the remaster of Diablo 2 that came out on PS5.
Diablo 4 is also on PS5, isn't it?
Yeah. But the Diablo 2 was like right at the beginning of the PS5 cycle, and it was a complete remaster. It's gorgeous because I've played it too. I haven't played Diablo 4.
It's a dungeon crawler game, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I'm like, I've never been a fan of the series. I know it has a huge following. I get it, but it was not a game I was interested in when I was little, and I never really gravitated towards it, and I'm kind of glad I did. Kind of like Baldur's Gate 3. It's like I've got other things to play.
No, I just read that it was a turn-based RPG, so I'm out.
Baldur's Gate is?
I love turn-based.
And now I may be even more in.
That's one of the things that I've missed so much, and the thing about Final Fantasy that I just missed. I wish that we could have a great turn-based RPG.
I just sadly don't think they're going to go back that route. And I understand why, but at the same time, it tears me apart because to see FF7, 8, and 9 be to me like this perfect trinity of Final Fantasy games that iterated on every single edition, different mechanics for the same concept of even throw in FF10. turn-based, but all very different systems in terms of mechanically how
I
they
haven't
were
played it, but
man.
it's funny because I did read like someone was talking about how God of War 2 is more of an RPG than Final Fantasy 16. Not that Final Fantasy 16 is bad.
You mean God of War Ragnarok?
Yeah.
No, I would agree. Absolutely. Honestly, even God of War 1, but more so, yes, too.
Which is crazy to me. Not not that Final Fantasy 16 is bad. It's just the fact that I really do love some of them old RPG roots that I wish I don't know. Now that I know Baldur's Gate 3 is, I'm kind of like, I'm not going to buy it, but it does interest me.
I just don't have
to know that I was. Yeah, I don't have the time.
But all of it to say that, and we're going to end on this point. Yes, it is okay for you to not only
finish your game.
Take your time and finish your game properly before you put it out there and ask for people for their hard-earned money. That's the bigger thing here. Is it's just like going to the movies. I don't give two craps about a movie that was worked on and had a labor of love from everybody who was involved, and turns out to be a flop, and it's a big budget mess because at the end of the day, content is king. And if you don't impress me and the movie is crap, I don't give two you-know-whats about who was involved or who shows up in the credits. I don't know you from Adam. All I asked for was you to create something that was worth me coming into the theater, paying my, now $20 to go see, and it making it worth my while. Because I worked hard for that $20. I expect you to work hard for the money you made off of this film, and now that you're hoping to make even more off of, now that people are going to see it and it's out there in the wild. Same with the video game industry.
Yeah.
It's like, honestly, there's so many games out there. I'd be thrilled if more developers and huge studios took their time to create AAA titles that honestly, look, freaking the last Elder Scrolls game and the last GTA game are over a decade old.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls 5 came out in 2011.
Yeah.
GTA 5 came out in 2013. We don't need huge AAA titles, especially in big franchises, every freaking year. It's okay to take your time. It's okay to spend all that time making it even bigger and more grandiose, but also more polished so that it's worth our while, and also so that you're not going to nickel and dime us with microtransactions, because that's BS. He had to get it in there. Alrighty, guys.
I just thought it was fitting.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. That is our show this week.
It's certainly not.
It's working!
That's not working. I'm just saying.
It's not. You're right. That was done correctly this week.
Yeah.
Very well done. Alrighty, guys, right there at the bottom of your screen, you see all of our social media. Like, share, subscribe. We appreciate all the love. Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics. Maybe I need to change our handle.
Red Moon X.
Red Moon X. I like that. Like our X-rated division.
That's right.
Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and of course, search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube and Rumble. That's going to do it for this week's episode. There is that old-fashioned way, though, that you can reach out to us. Keith, do you remember what that is?
Well, yeah. They could email us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that?
At RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Man, soothing and sends a shiver up my leg every time. Alrighty, guys, that's it for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Keith Cheatham.
Blue Beetle next week.
Dang.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.